and clear, and perhaps you too, was that absolutely we should not lose optimism, we should not lose hope. This is still very much a search operation. The size now of the scope and scale, twice the size of Connecticut in terms of the area being searched. Not very conclusive in terms of those sounds that we reported hearing. People saying it was essentially Morse code, 30-minute intervals. Not very tight in terms of confirming that, but just as you will have just been hearing, absolutely continuing to keep going. Lots of conversations about oxygen levels. If you were watching this show last night, you will recall that at 6 o'clock last night, they did state there were around 41 hours of oxygen left. By my calculations, that brings us up to about 17 hours as it stands now. But a bit of pushback there in that conference saying that that is not the only measure to to consider when it comes to this search operation. Now, we're joined by former naval psychologist for the US Navy, Dr. Justin D'Arienzo. Good evening to you. You are a former naval operator, also, as well, you've been involved when it comes to the psychology of people going on some of these kind of missions. What do you think will be going through these people's minds now? They are experienced explorers and adventurers. I mean, how do you even try and keep spirits up and keep calm in these situations?
Sure. So certainly you mentioned these people are explorers, and they are the 10X people. I mean, they are adventurers, they are successful business people, and they've been in many high stakes situations before. So these people are like military operators, so to speak, even though they're civilians. And thank goodness there are the best people looking for them too. So it's my belief that combination of within that formula, there's the greatest chances of survival here.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just hearing as well in terms of people there asking those officers that was giving the press update, how can you retain the hope? What hope can you give to the families and the loved ones of these people currently lost at sea? And I think that is a very tricky dynamic, isn't it? Because you don't want to give too much hope, but likewise, you want to make sure that you maintain, enough hope to keep people going. How do you manage that?
Sure. So you want to make sure that the families and the friends are maintaining hope with action. And what that means is, the hardest part here is dealing with uncertainty. And how do we deal with uncertainty? Well, we focus on what we can control in our lives. And that means spending time together. That means exercising. That means staying closely in communication with the search and rescue operators too. So we have our thumb on the pulse of what's happening. So that's how people can survive and make the best of this harrowing and very dire situation. But certainly there is hope, and I think that Coast Guard captain, if he is expressing hope, then we should also have hope, because this is an internationally coordinated effort. I mean, with the French Navy, the Canadian military, the U.S. Navy, all the best people are looking for this submersible.
Indeed. OK, thank you very much for your time. That is just Dr. Justin D'Arienzo there with his thoughts. Also keeping me company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. I've got Lord Daniel Moylan alongside me and political commentator Joe Phillips as well. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Daniel, your thoughts on this situation? I
mean, it's fascinating in an awful way to watch a potential tragedy unfold and to be so helpless watching it all. And all of us, I think, just got keep our optimism up and pray that they recover and rescue these people while they're still alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, Joe, it is, the world is gripped. It really is to this.
Well, and we've had this before, haven't we, Michelle, with the boys in the cave in Thailand. We've had terrible things like this where sometimes there's been a happy ending, sometimes there hasn't. I'm thinking of the cheeky Rafiki, the boat that capsized in the Atlantic with a very young crew a few years ago. And Philip Hammond, the then Foreign Secretary, was urged to send helicopters out.
Yeah, while you're talking, by the way, Jo, I'm just going to be playing on the screen just something that shows some context in terms of the depths that we're talking about, just as you're talking, so carry on.
Yeah, and, you know, they searched and they never found anything. And, you know, for the families, it's terrible because you never know what happened. This is, as Daniel says, I mean, you know, there's something grotesquely voyeuristic about us watching it, that it's almost unreal. But I do remember many, many, many years ago, decades ago, there was a submarine that got stuck somewhere, and there was some, you know, long before they had the same sort of technology that they've got these days. But, you know, they're doing everything they can. I think, you know, he made it very clear, the person doing the press conference, that you can't read too much into the noises. You might like to think it's SOS, but all it's done is give them somewhere to focus their search on.
Yeah, and I'm just showing some context on the screen because the Titanic, the wreck site there, it's 12,500 feet. Just to put this into context, the Statue of Liberty, for example, is 305 foot. And you can see some of these landmarks that you're passing on the screen and some of the depths that we're trying to reach in terms of metres. The Titanic, 3,810 metres. I mean, it's just incredible. And it's just beyond the kind of, you know, when it comes to getting that context of just how deep this is, and this is going to be one of the challenges. It's one thing finding this vessel, but then, Daniel, they've got to get it back up again. And even that itself, getting it back up, will take several hours to do that safely.
It will, and I have no expertise in this, but clearly there's the possibility it's damaged in some way. Presumably it's lost its communications. And it could be damaged in other ways, so it might be difficult to get up.
Yeah, indeed. You know, I was hoping, actually, that 6 o'clock press conference might have brought some positive news to us all, but alas not. The search does continue. The second there's any development in that story, we will, of course, bring that live to you here at GB News. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, live with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me, Tory peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and political commentator Joe Phillips. Welcome back, everybody. Now, you might have seen what's been going on today. At a London hospital, there have been reports of 2 people being stabbed there and a man arrested. Let's cross live to our reporter, Lisa Hartle, who is there on the scene. Lisa, good evening. What can you tell us?
Hello, yes. At around 1:20 this afternoon, police received a call reporting that 2 people had been stabbed here. When the armed police arrived on the scene, they found 2 people with stab wounds, both taken to hospital, one believed to be in a life-threatening condition. A man was also arrested, who's suspected of carrying out the attacks, was arrested outside the hospital. He's also been sent to hospital, also with life-threatening injuries, though the police say that they believe these are self-inflicted. Now, we spoke to a man who said he witnessed part of the attack earlier. We've got a clip to play from him now about how he felt having seen what he saw.
Shocked, really, just to see, obviously just to be this close to an incident like this is quite shocking, really, yeah. This afternoon we just see him come running out the side of the building with a pickaxe in his hand, chasing two people, which we thought were 2 lads that done something incriminating inside the hospital, hence that's why he was chasing them. So that's why we have approached him to make sure he was okay. But that time he's come towards us swinging his axe, and he's just told us it's none of our business, get out of our way. So I kindly stepped out of his way and he's just gone and done what he's done.
So that eyewitness there, he said that originally he was outside having his lunch. He's been working in the hospital, and he saw 2 men being chased around the car park by this man with a pickaxe. The 2 men ran off. The eyewitness then thought that the guy with the pickaxe, the man with the pickaxe, had left. He then saw him return with the pickaxe again and go into the hospital chasing the men in there, which is where we believe 2 men were stabbed. So police say that they don't believe that this is terror related, and the hospital was evacuated earlier and shut down, that's now reopened. At the time, obviously it caused a lot of panic. Lots of people were reported to be running from the hospital, but police say that they are going to continue their investigation.
Lisa Hartle, thank you very much for that update. I've got to say, when I was watching this unfold, I've seen lots of the footage online, Daniel. One of the things that really struck me is that when you go to the hospital, you are literally at your most vulnerable in lots of ways when you're certainly staying there, definitely. And it always makes me think about attacks within hospitals. There's something about it that makes me kind of, you know, of course, any attack is sad and tragic, but when it's in a place where you're supposed to be safe and all the rest of it, for me, there's something even worse about that. And then I think about all of the workers, the frontline workers that get attacked in hospitals as well, and whether or not we do enough to take all that seriously. What do you think? Well,
you're right. The way we operate hospitals, it is true that there are large parts of hospitals that are quite secure. In most wards, for example, you can't get in without ringing a bell and there's a buzzer system to open the door. But there are large parts of the hospital, the ground floor reception all the way through the staircases, the escalators and so on, where anyone can come and go. And if people are determined to have a fight, and mercifully, I mean, we don't get too far in because there's a police case, but it does seem to me these weren't hospital staff who were injured in this or were the victims of this. Just listening to that, I don't know. But if people are determined to have a fight, it's as public an area as a car park is, and you can get in and you can go anywhere you like.
Yeah, true.
So maybe they should be thinking a bit more about that. In COVID, there were controls on going through the doors at the front. You know, you had to, somebody stopped you, checked you were wearing a mask and so on. So maybe there needs to be some checks on going in.
That's a very good point, actually. They did indeed stop you within a second of crossing that threshold. If you didn't have a mask on, woe betide you. What do you make of it, Joe?
Well, I think, as you know, Michelle, one of my sons is a paramedic. And so, you know, we're not just talking about people in a hospital setting.
No.
We're talking about people going to an incident, and he has been assaulted and attacked quite violently, as have his crewmates. And, you know, whether you're a paramedic, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a porter, whether you're on reception, or you just happen to be a person in A&E waiting with your sick child or something, you know, violence is horrible wherever it happens. But I'm afraid, you know, I'm afraid, in a good way, these incidents are very rare. You know, you are more likely to see something like this or be close to something like this outside a pub on a Friday or Saturday night or somewhere like that. But, you know, you think about people in shops, for goodness sake. We are always seeing images of people doing sort of violent shoplifting and threatening or attacking people. So, you know, we can't all go around in Kevlar vests.
This is true.
And, you know, you can stop people, but what are you going to stop them for? Are you carrying an offensive weapon? You know, and don't forget, one of the other problems which we've talked about on this programme before is, you know, you have got people with mental health issues who are often, you know, picked up by ambulances or, for whatever reason, find themselves in a hospital setting because there's nowhere else for them to go. And that adds a greater stress and strain to the staff working there.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys at home, and obviously this is an ongoing legal case, this particular one, so I can't comment too much on the specifics of it, but what we do know is that a fellow with a pickaxe, and this is in the middle of the day. I really do feel that this country is getting out of control when it comes to violence. I mean, did it really used to be like this? Did we used to have all these instances where people in the middle of the day, broad daylight, with axes and knives? Did it used to be like that? Am I getting old? Because it feels to me like it's just getting worse and worse out there. What do you think? GBviews@gbnews.com is how you reach me. I want to bring some of your thoughts in just a couple of minutes, but I also want to talk to you about the state of the economy. Let's face it, it's not working in many, many ways. Who's to blame and what do we do about it? See you in 2.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching. Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, alongside me, the Tory peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and the political commentator, Joe Phillips. Good evening, welcome back to everybody there. Now, I was asking you, do you think the world is getting a little bit more violent, or let's just hone in here, the UK, I think it does. Divided, though. Some of you saying, actually, when you look back at various points in history, there was a lot of crime and violence, perhaps. Social media, though, makes us more aware to it because I've got to say, within seconds of things happening these days, you can go online, go onto social media and see it unfolding right in front of your eyes. Often, what's up there, though, is not factually accurate. It turns out to be some random thing in a different country from God knows before. So you've got to be careful with that stuff. But you tell me, does it feel like the world, the UK, is getting more violent to you? I'll tell you what it might feel like to you as well, that the state of this economy in this country right now, it's not great. Many people would say, of course, food inflation, 16.5%. We know that that is spiralling. You've got mortgage holders. We know that your rates are absolutely spiralling. And, of course, UK inflation stuck at 8.7% as well. Those figures out today. Many people, Lord Moylan, saying that to them, it does feel like the economy is broken, damaged, that their pockets really are being hit. Do you agree with that? Do you think we've got a healthy economy right now?
Well, overall, the economy is still very, very slowly growing, and we're not in recession. That's the way it is at the moment. But we have a major inflation crisis. We have allowed inflation to get out of control. The people responsible for inflation in this country and for managing it are the Bank of England. That's been outsourced to them since 1997. And they have, instead of controlling inflation, they have printed money, and the result is inflation. The only solution that they're going to have at their disposal to combating it, I'm afraid, is higher interest rates. And so we are heading for a very, very bad time, both in people's pockets and possibly even they could tip us into recession as they do this. And in my view, the reason they've got it wrong is that a belief has grown up, and all governments have shared this from 2008 onwards. Labour, the Conservative Lib Dem government, and then the Conservatives. So that's what we've had over those years. They've all shared this idea that when you are faced with a recession, you can somehow spend your way out of it. Whereas sometimes it's better to say, no, we're going to have to take a step backwards in order to get good growth coming out of it. And that's what we haven't had. We've had pretty well no growth over those years, but we've trundled along on easy money, going nowhere.
Yeah, and what do you think? Do you feel like we're in a good shape at the moment? I'm laughing because I don't know anyone that would say we are.
No, we're not. And, you know, the other thing is that government debt is at the highest that it's ever been since, I think, 1961. You know, there are many factors here. I do slightly agree with Daniel that the Bank of England were too slow to raise interest rates when things were beginning to get a bit tricksy. And that obviously, you know, people will blame COVID and people will blame the war in Ukraine. And, you know, it's undeniable those two events have had a huge impact. I mean, the war in Ukraine has had a huge impact on food prices.
Yeah, but inflation was already at about 6%.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, the government wasted billions and billions and billions on track and trace and PPE equipment that's now been dumped, you know, never to be used or anything else. But I think the business about housing, because we expect the Bank of England to put interest rates up tomorrow, which means that mortgages will go up. And I think the real fear with economists is that if the housing market collapses, then the recession that Daniel refers to may come sooner rather than later. So it's really how do you manage it and how do the banks... And, you know, there are the banks and the supermarkets and other suppliers do have to take a little look at how they are behaving, because we've talked before, Michelle, about, you know, greedflation. prices might be coming down, but they're not being passed on yet. And I know people will say, oh, well, we've got contracts and we've got this, that and the other. But it's this core inflation, which is not food, it's not tobacco, it's not alcohol. And energy prices have come down quite considerably. They're still higher than they were. But that has helped. But if that hadn't happened, or, you know, something happens to make energy prices go up again, we're going to be back to square one. So we're not in a very good state at all.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about this tomorrow as well, of course, because that's the Bank of England decision on the rates will happen tomorrow. And I'm fascinated. I'll be in Barnsley. They're letting me out and about, everyone. What a treat. I'll be in Barnsley tomorrow talking to the good Yorkshire folk there and getting thoughts about whether or not many people will say it's time for intervention to help out mortgage earners. But if you think, I mean, I've got to say I don't agree with this massively blunt instrument of increasing these rates, but the reason that they're doing it, they would argue, is to try and take money out of the economy, make it tighter for people so there's less cash slushing around. And if you then have this situation from the government or whoever to put that money back into those homeowners' pockets, then isn't that defeating the object? Because then around and around and around we go. So what's the answer then?
Well, and also you can't, you know, it would be grossly unfair to help out mortgage holders when you know, we already know, and there have been figures out this week about the proportion of income that is being spent on rent, and rent is making it absolutely impossible for so many people to, you know.
But then the flip side of that will be, the flip side, if there's renters watching this, what they'll say is one of the reasons that rents are spiralling out of control is because landlords are putting their prices up because their rates are increasing. So actually, if you help those mortgage earners, help those landlords, and that will trickle through to the rental people. But you tell me at home, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? We'll be discussing it live, of course, once it does happen. But what do you think? Should there be another rate rise? You know, I would say no, but perhaps you would disagree with me. I want your thoughts. And I'm looking forward to discussing that one with you as well tomorrow. But for tonight, though, there's a lot I want to respond to, not least. I was in the headlines today. Do you remember we had that conversation about children identifying as cats? I've been criticised a lot for my response to that, so I'll be responding in just a couple of seconds. But also, as well, it has sparked quite a lot of conversation about what is going on in schools. Investigation now underway imminently. But when it comes to what our kids are taught, particularly in sex education, who gets the final say, and should parents be allowed to see what their kids are being taught?
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point, but boom!
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Lots of well-wishing coming through the inbox for those people trapped in the North Atlantic somewhere. We don't know where. I was very sad not to be able to bring you positive news at that press conference, which we started the show with tonight. But the search does indeed continue. Talking about broken Britain. Lawless Britain is what some of you are calling it tonight, saying absolutely you do agree that it's getting worse. Many of you saying that actually you think it is just going to get worse and worse and worse. A couple of you getting in touch saying there should be, Jamie says, courthouse level security at hospital entrances. Do you think that would go some way in protecting the staff that work there? I don't know. Dale, he says he was a paramedic. He tells me a few stories actually of him being attacked multiple times whilst doing his job. Disgusting. If you ask me. Now, if you're a regular viewer to this show, you might remember, I think it was the start of this week, a couple of days ago anyway, where we were talking about the topic of children identifying as a variety of different things, quite frankly, within schools. The example that we were discussing was cats. Anyway, I was discussing it on the show and I gave my opinion. Well, the newspapers, a couple of them don't seem to like what I had to say. I noticed this article, for example, this morning. Apparently, I am feeling the heat in the child gender row. And what has ensued, by the way, off the back of this conversation is nothing short of an absolute pile-on social media. I have been called, ladies and gents, words that I won't repeat at tea time. It'll make your eyes water and your hair curl, but you can imagine them. They're not pleasant. One of the nicer words I've been called is scum. Multiple times I've been told I am a child bully, I should be ashamed of myself and that I am a disgrace. One person even told me I shouldn't be allowed near kids. Well, I've got a little message for all of you lot, your newspaper writers and all the rest of it. You will not bully me. And this is what happens when people dare to speak out about the absolute ridiculousness that is going on in our schools and beyond. A pile-on happens and people are shamed into being silenced. They're on this weird ideology progresses because people cannot handle, and understandably, by the way, because it's not nice, they can't handle the pressure. But for the record, I wasn't mocking children. I'm mocking you, the adults, that indulge this ridiculous fantasy ideology that will have real-world consequences. So no, I will not be apologising, thank you very much. And no, I will not be backtracking either. And actually, more people, I would say, Daniel Moylan, need to be speaking out about what is going on in our school. That particular school in question is going to be subject to a government review. It's opened up a big conversation in lots of ways about whether or not parents should be more involved with what it is that their children are learning, particularly in aspects of things like sex education.
Well, we've got this case, haven't we, where the judge has decided that the copyright interests of the providers of the sex and relationship education, which is a sort of private charity, outweigh the rights of the parents to see the material, and I think that is simply wrong. The moral and legal responsibility for the education of children lies firmly with parents. The state is a facilitator. The state is there to help parents discharge their duty to educate children, and if this decision, which I understand is going to appeal, if it is upheld, then I think that Parliament should move rapidly to change the law so that parents have an unfettered right to see the texts that are being used in their schools, just as they always could when there were school textbooks.
Indeed, Jo.
Well, I don't know the background to this case, and I don't know whether the mother actually made attempt to talk to the head teacher or the teacher involved in this case, because I would have thought that most sensible teachers would have sat down and would have had a conversation. I think what is the issue here is this third-party provider. Now, the government has already announced a review of sex education, which is compulsory in secondary schools, and they're supposed to be reporting back in September. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. But, I mean, it does seem really weird that the commercial interests of a third party overrule the goodwill and the good relationship between a school and the parents, because most schools want parents to be involved and be engaged, and most schools and teachers that I know would welcome a conversation, however robust it might be, with parents who wanted to express their concerns.
Yeah, the heart of a lot of this is, you mentioned about external providers. At the heart of it, everyone, it's about the confidentiality and the commercialism, if that's the word, commerciality of this content, because what they would argue is that the school enters into a confidentiality agreement with this content deliverer, and if you then publish this information for whoever to see, the parents or beyond, then you're affecting the third party's ability to sell this course on and to make money, because theoretically it's publicly available. It'll be really interesting to see the outcome of this, because I've got to tell you now, I would not have my child learning about some of these very sensitive matters, particularly the direction of travel that we find ourselves in, if I wasn't familiar with and okay, quite frankly, with what he is being taught. Would you, with your children? Would you be happy if it was happening to your grandkids, being taught stuff that you do not even know and you're not allowed to know? It's all a little bit weird, if you ask me, and I've got to say, I do not like the direction of travel that we are on. But for now, Joe, thank you for your time. Lord Moylan, thank you as well for yours, your company. Thank you very much, Herm, for your company. Do not go anywhere. I will be back tomorrow in Barnsley, everybody. What a treat. I love being out and about talking to you guys. But up next, Nigel Farage will be with you, and he'll also be with me in Barnsley too. Night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here with the GB News forecast from the Met Office. A change on the way over the next few days, fewer showers and sunny conditions for many. It will turn hotter in the south later, but there'll be some persistent rain in the north by the weekend as well. Nevertheless, showers on Wednesday soon disappearing into the night, and then clear spells by the time we wake up on Thursday. There's always some patchy cloud out there, and temperatures won't fall much further than 13 to 15 Celsius in the south, perhaps the single figures in the north. A fresher feel compared to the start of the week and compared to what's to come heading into the weekend, with some muggy nights returning. But plenty of sunshine first thing on Thursday. As the temperatures rise, we'll see the shower clouds bubble up once again. Again, these will be hit and miss downpours, some thunderstorms out there as well, and most likely affecting northern England into the Midlands, Wales and East Anglia. Away from these, any showers will be fairly isolated. Temperatures hitting 29 Celsius in the southeast, low to mid-20s fairly widely across the UK. And into Thursday nights, we keep that muggy feel. In fact, it's a warmer night to come across the UK, despite plenty of clear skies out there. The clouds will build in the west by the end of the night, with some showery rain for Northern Ireland. And in many places, temperatures holding up in the mid-teens, and perhaps somewhere like London, 18 Celsius. So we start off Friday with those outbreaks of rain pushing into western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Showery rain, but some heavy bursts as well. For England and Wales, it's largely dry at first with some sunshine, but parts of Wales will see some showers move in by the afternoon. All this associated with a series of weather fronts which are increasingly affecting the north and northwest of the UK into the weekend. They're going to slide across northwestern parts with high pressure.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Tonight, well, the inflation figures once again were very disappointing. We will debate, has the Bank of England blown it? We'll also get the latest update from across the pond as to what's happening with that missing submarine that went down to have a look at the Titanic. And we have an update on the hate cleric story that we exposed last night. Mr. Abbasi was on a tour of the United Kingdom. I'm pleased to say one of his events has already been cancelled. That and much else after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Well, the very latest in our top story this hour is that the US Coast Guard says they're searching an area underwater where noises have been detected as they race to find a missing tourist submersible visiting the Titanic. 5 surface assets and 2 remotely operated vehicles are currently deployed in the North Atlantic. Officials did, however, say they don't really know what the noises are or if they originated from the Titan, but trained audiologists are listening in and analysing those noises. 5 people are inside the craft. They may have as little as 20 hours oxygen left, limited rations on board as well. British-Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman are on board, along with British billionaire explorer Hamish Harding. Captain Jamie Frederick from the US Coast Guard said within the last hour rescuers have to remain optimistic.
The surface search is now approximately 2 times the size of Connecticut, and the subsurface search is up to 2.5 miles deep, exponentially expanding the size of the search area. We also have to factor in the ever-changing weather conditions, currents, and sea states that expand the search area every hour. There is an enormous complexity associated with this case due to the location being so far offshore, and the coordination between multiple agencies and nations.
Well, we'll keep you up to date on that story, of course, throughout the rest of the evening. Meanwhile, a man was arrested today following a stabbing outside Central Middlesex Hospital in West London. 2 people sustained injuries, one with life-threatening injuries. The suspect admitted to hospital with severe self-inflicted injuries. A spokesperson for the hospital says the building was temporarily locked down but has since reopened. Armed police were deployed to the scene, but the incident was not being treated as terror-related. Now, as you've been hearing, the UK's inflation rate stayed the same despite expectations. There may have been a little fall. The Office for National Statistics released its figures showing inflation stayed at 8.7% up till the end of May. That's the same rate as during April, and that comes as the UK's net debt reached £2.6 trillion at the end of the same month. Meanwhile, the average UK house price increased by 3.5% in the 12 months to April. The government has set out a major package of financial support for Ukraine to bolster the country's economic stability as it continues to push back Russian forces. The package includes a £20 million boost to ensure companies working in Ukraine are funded properly. That includes the funding of £2.35 billion of World Bank loan guarantees supporting the restoration of vital public services, including running schools and hospitals. The Prime Minister says Russia must pay for the destruction it's inflicted as a result of the war. That's your news. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Well, it's the same story as last month. The inflation figures were out at 7 o'clock this morning, and once again, the markets, the city, the analysts are all shocked. Why? Because inflation didn't fall. And that's despite the fact that, of course, filling up the car is much cheaper than it was this time last year, that the rocketing food inflation was less than it had been the previous month. But it is the underlying core inflation that has caused the problem. Now, I have to say, I do hold the Governor of the Bank of England, Bailey, very responsible for this. He didn't even see it coming. And when it did appear, he said, don't worry your poor little heads. This will merely be transitory. And now we're ramping up interest rates. They will go up again tomorrow. It'll be the 13th rise in rates as they try to dampen it down. But nobody, of course, acknowledges at all that the massive increase in the money supply, years of quantitative easing, have anything to do with it. No, we can't say that. It reminds me of a comment I heard in 1980 from Enoch Powell, a very early monetarist, who said, inflation is a disease of money caused by government. And I believe that to be the case, except in this particular case, I think it's the Bank of England. Do you agree with me? Has the Bank of England blown it? Give me your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.com. Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, joins me. Liam, one of Rishi's big 5 pledges is that by Christmas, inflation will be down under 3%. Not going to happen, is it?
That quote you just gave, interestingly, Nigel, it echoed the words of a Nobel laureate economist, Milton Friedman, of course. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Let's come on to quantitative easing, because I, like you, have been very critical of quantitative easing for many years. And just look at the numbers. 8.7% inflation today in May, a huge surprise. Almost no one saw that coming. Inflation now is an outlier in the UK because Eurozone inflation is 6.1%, US inflation is 4%. So we do have the highest inflation by a long way in the G7. Food price inflation still above 18%, even though wholesale food prices have come down a lot. But as you say, it's core inflation. This is inflation when you strip out volatile things like food prices, energy prices, alcohol prices. Oh, not much fun for you.
Thank you.
Lots of things that are imported, so you strip out the exchange rate implications on inflation, and it's the underlying domestic price pressure from wage bargaining, from supply chains domestically, and indeed from monetary growth. And that core inflation went up from 6.8% in April to 7.1% in May. And let's have a quick look, before we talk about QE, at interest rates, where they're going to go tomorrow. We can see from this graph that the Bank of England kept interest rates ultra low 2017 all the way through to 2021. Then you had those 12 successive rises. That's why 5-, 3- and 2-year mortgage deals, as they're now unwinding, people are having to remortgage at much, much higher rates. But the Bank of England tomorrow, it's nailed on. It's going to go from at least 4.5% base rate to 4.75%, possibly even to 5%.
Yeah.
The money markets are now saying there's a 50% chance that will happen, a more radical interest rate rise to try and stamp down on inflation.
This, of course, impacts on people's lives in an enormous way, and we'll be in Barnsley doing a Farage at Large tomorrow night. You'll be with me, and we'll be talking to folk there about what this means for them. How responsible is the bank for all of this?
There are many reasons for this UK inflation. There's lockdown, of course, which caused huge inflation. Then on top of that, the war in Ukraine, though we must say UK inflation was a 30-year high even before Putin's invasion in February 2022. But for me, the big issue that no mainstream commentators like talking about, certainly not members of the Monetary Policy Committee, oh no, it wouldn't be the done thing, chaps and chapesses, is the fact that we have massively expanded the central bank's balance sheet since 2009. Quantitative easing, an emergency measure which I agreed with in part at the beginning to stop the banking system collapsing, but the emergency measure became a lifestyle choice. It became crack cocaine of economics because it ramped up financial markets and it meant governments could borrow cheaply.
What did it do? It made the rich richer.
It made the rich richer. OK, you had the...
Asset push inflation.
It was asset push inflation. It was a huge driver of wealth inequality. It pushed up house prices for people who had houses, made it more difficult for people who didn't. But we must distinguish, Nigel, between pre-COVID era QE from 2009 to 2019. That was £425 billion expansion of the Bank of England's balance sheet, basically creating money from nothing, digital money from nothing. But we did more QE during the 2 years of lockdown, Nigel, than we did during the previous 10 years. QE money printing funded furlough. It funded lockdown. It made that ridiculous policy, in my view, possible. And the post-COVID QE, Nigel, and this is what's barely acknowledged, I've made this point, many columns, parliamentary select committees, post-COVID QE is more inflationary because the pre-COVID QE stayed inside the financial system. It went back to the central bank as the reserves of the banks that had sold the gilts to the central bank.
But this was different,
Trust me, I know you get this, though it's complicated. But viewers and listeners should understand that post-COVID QE created by the Bank of England was paid directly to firms in C-bill loans and COVID recovery loans and to households in furlough. QE funded furlough, QE funded those C-bill loans, many of which, of course, haven't been recovered.
So government policy with the Bank of England has caused this problem. There's no doubt in my mind about that, nor in yours. And yet the Labour Party don't even challenge them on it.
Almost no mainstream politician talks